A millionaire stopped his car at a red light and saw a 9-year-old girl selling flowers for her sick grandmother. What he discovered next changed his life forever. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe for more stories filled with unexpected twists and emotions. The morning didn't arrive. It unfolded, like silk sliding across skin. It crept over the rooftops, flooding alleyways and windows with gold. Light caught on the dew that clung to rusted bike chains, glinted off the chipped rims of city buses, and shimmered faintly on the windshield of a black car parked on the side of Avenue B. Lily Bennett stood on the corner, her hands wrapped tightly around the worn handle of a wicker basket filled with small bundles of flowers, roses, daisies, carnations, a single sunflower that had begun to wilt. She was 9 years old and already knew how to choose which blooms would sell quickest in a hurry, the bright ones for couples, the quiet ones for regrets. Beside her, on a bench shaded by a crooked street lamp, sat her grandmother, Margaret. Her grey hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore a sweater far too large for her small frame. Not too far from the curb, "Lily," Margaret said softly, her voice steady despite the rasp. Lily nodded and moved forward as the red light held the traffic still like a conductor's hand. Her shoes were scuffed at the toes, but her steps were light. She approached the first car. The driver barely glanced at her. "Would you like a flower, sir? For someone you love?" He grunted, eyes fixed on the dashboard. "It's okay," she said, offering a soft smile. "Have a good day." One car rolled down the window, a woman distracted by her phone. "How much?" $2, Lily replied. The woman handed her 3 and drove off without a word. Lily tucked the dollar into her side pocket, the one with the little stitched star her mother had sewn when the pants were still new. The sun climbed higher. Heat settled slowly into the pavement, the kind that made tired men loosen their collars and mothers fan their babies with grocery receipts. Margaret coughed behind her, dry and persistent. Lily turned. "You okay?" Margaret waved her off, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Then came the black car. It was sleek, but not showy. Quiet, like something that didn't want to be noticed, but always was. The windows were tinted, the wheels clean, the body dustless even after the morning breeze. Lily hesitated, then she stepped forward, careful not to trip on the uneven curb. She stopped beside the passenger window and waited. The glass slid down with a soft whir. A man sat inside. He looked like he hadn't slept much. His eyes were sharp but distant, like someone looking out from the back of a long tunnel. He wore a grey shirt with the sleeves rolled up and one hand on the wheel. The other rested beside a stainless steel travel mug. Lily held up a white daisy. "Good morning." He blinked, his gaze dropping to the flower. "What's the price?" he asked. She paused. "This one's free," he studied her, "for being the first to really see me today." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, but something near it. He reached out and took the daisy between his fingers gently, like he was holding something made of glass. The touch lingered a second too long. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily?" He exhaled slowly. "Of course it is." Then the light turned green, and the cars behind him grumbled impatiently. He nodded once and drove away. Lily watched the black car disappear into the city's morning pulse, then turned and walked back to the bench. Margaret's eyes followed her. "Everything all right?" Lily nodded. "He took the daisy." "Did he pay?" "No, I didn't ask." Margaret didn't scold. She simply folded her hands over her lap, where a delicate handkerchief rested, ivory, with the name Emily embroidered. In blue, it had belonged to Lily's mother. They never talked much about Emily. Her name floated between them, a memory too light to carry and too heavy to drop. Lily sat beside her grandmother and leaned her head on her shoulder. "Can we go by?" "The bakery today?" she asked. "If we sell 8 more. Margaret replied, her voice softer now. "We'll get the sweet rolls." Lily smiled. The cinnamon ones? With extra glaze. She stood again, brushing invisible dust off her shirt. I'll sell 10. Across the street, a boy no older than 12 kicked at a broken soda can, his backpack dragging behind him. He didn't look up as he passed. He never did. Lily offered him a flower once. He had slapped it from her hand. Still, every morning, she set aside a yellow carnation just in case. As the hours passed, the air thickened. City life pressed in, bus brakes hissed, radios blared, someone cursed at a parking meter, but Lily moved like someone dancing between raindrops, light, quick, kind. By noon, her basket was almost empty. 2 more, she told her grandmother, beaming. Then we feast. They laughed, real laughter, the kind that echoed in their bones and made Margaret's eyes glisten just a little. Behind them, on the opposite sidewalk, the black car had returned, parked this time. The man was still. Inside, watching, Margaret noticed first. Her posture stiffened, hand tightening on the handkerchief. Is he following you? She asked. I don't think so, Lily replied, unsure. Margaret squinted, studying him, then shook her head more to herself than to Lily. Some people carry ghosts in their eyes. The man didn't move. Eventually Lily approached again. You came back, she said. He nodded. I had a meeting. It ended early. She didn't understand, but smiled anyway. I saved this one, she said, pulling a lavender sprig from beneath the others. It smells like peace. He accepted it. I could use some of that. They didn't say more. He stayed another minute, then drove away. Margaret watched the car disappear. Her fingers gently touched the name on the handkerchief. Do you believe in signs? Lily asked. Sometimes, Margaret replied, but only when they whisper. That night, Lily placed the leftover flower stems in a mason jar filled with tap water. She set them on the windowsill beside a small candle she wasn't allowed to light alone. She looked out at the dark street and whispered into the glass. Come back. The city moved like a tired machine, its groan muffled beneath the hum of engines and the impatient pulse of traffic lights. Ethan Walker sat in his car, trapped behind the glass cocoon of a luxury sedan, air conditioning humming at a steady, artificial rhythm. He wasn't supposed to be on this street. His office was in the opposite direction, and his morning meetings were already waiting in a digital calendar filled with color-coded urgency. But here he was again, at the same intersection where someone had disrupted the algorithm of his day. There she was, the girl, Lily. She walked between the lanes with the same quiet determination as before, her hands carefully balancing a plastic basket filled with wilted flowers. They weren't store-bought. Each one seemed to have been picked from forgotten corners of the city. Cracks in sidewalks, edges of vacant lots, maybe even the small strip of dirt behind a bus stop. Yet she held them like they were precious, like offerings. The light turned red, and Lily stepped closer to the car. Ethan lowered the window halfway. She looked up at him with eyes too knowing for her age. There was no trace of fear in her posture, only weariness softened by grace. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice small but steady. "Would you like one? They're fresh." Her hands trembled slightly, but she smiled. Ethan glanced at the flowers, then back at her. "You again," he said, more to himself than to her. "I remember you," she said. "You took a daisy yesterday, didn't charge you." He wanted to say something, ask her why she was here again or where she belonged, but the words felt clumsy in his throat. Instead, he reached into the console and pulled out a $5 bill. She hesitated. "You don't have to," she whispered. "Some people just need something beautiful, even if they don't know it." He stared at her. That sentence, it hung in the air, fragile and almost absurd coming from a child, but it clung to his skin like scent, familiar, inexplicable. He gave her the money anyway. She handed him a small cluster of wildflowers tied with a string that looked like it had once been part of a shoelace. "Thank you," she said, stepping back just as the light turned green. He didn't drive. Not right away. He sat there, frozen, as horns blared behind him. Something about her, her voice, her face, that phrase, had scratched at something buried inside him, a memory he hadn't invited. Later that day, Ethan sat in his corner office on the 30th floor, surrounded by glass and silence. A sleek table stood in front of him, spotless except for a crystal bottle of water and the small, wrinkled bouquet Lily had given him. He hadn't thrown it away. That surprised him. He leaned back in the leather chair, letting his gaze drift to the skyline. But his mind was elsewhere. Her voice echoed in his thoughts. Some people just need something beautiful, even if they don't know it. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Do we have anything on the non-profits near North Lexington?" There was a pause. "Just the usual donation request, sir. I want to know more, especially anything involving kids." Another pause. "Should I schedule a visit?" Ethan didn't answer right away. "No, not yet. Just send me what you find." He ended the call and looked at the flowers again. One petal had started to curl inward. It looked like it was folding into itself, retreating. The next morning, he returned to the same spot. This time, he didn't pretend it was coincidence. He parked on the side street and got out of the car. The air smelled like exhaust and roasted peanuts from a cart down the block. City smells, gritty, persistent, but somewhere in that mixture there was also the faint, sweet scent of marigold. Found her standing by the traffic light, her eyes scanning cars like a vendor at a silent auction. A woman sat on the curb nearby, wrapped in a faded shawl. Her hair was grey, her posture hunched but alert. She watched Lily with quiet intensity. Ethan approached slowly. Lily noticed him before he said a word. "You came back." "I did," he said. She tilted her head. "Most people don't." "Are you here every day?" She nodded. "Mornings mostly, school after. Sometimes I help Grandma in the evenings." He looked toward the older woman. "Is that her?" "Margaret," Lily said softly, as if the name itself was something sacred. "She raised me." "Where's your mother?" Lily didn't answer. She looked down, adjusting the flowers in. "Her basket, I'm sorry," Ethan said, immediately regretting the question. "It's okay," Lily said after a moment. "She died when I was little. Grandma says she used to love lilies. That's why she named me that." Ethan felt the air shift inside his chest. "What was her name?" "Emily," Lily said, almost in a whisper. "Emily Rose." He stepped back slightly as if the words had pushed him. Emily, a name buried deep, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. The city kept moving around them. Buses hissed, tires screeched, a saxophone played somewhere blocks away. He couldn't speak. Not yet. Lily's voice softened. "You look like someone who works too much." He let out a short, stunned breath. "You're not wrong." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Even people who work too much need flowers." Then she turned and walked toward Margaret, who nodded in Ethan's direction without rising. Ethan stood there for a long time before getting back in his car. He drove straight home, but his thoughts were trailing behind him, caught somewhere between a child's voice and a ghost named Emily. That night, Ethan opened the attic door of his apartment, a place he hadn't entered in years. Dust coated every surface, but the room still smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. He pulled down a cardboard box marked with black ink. Personal, 2009. Inside were photographs, letters, a journal, and a picture of her, Emily. They were young, smiling. She had daisies in her hair and freckles on her nose. He'd forgotten those freckles. Or maybe he had forced himself to. One letter sat on top, yellowed and folded. He opened it carefully. "If you ever wonder, yes, I loved you. Even when I left, it wasn't because I stopped. I just couldn't bring you into my chaos." There was no signature, but there didn't need to be. He pulled out a smaller envelope from the bottom of the box. Inside was a photograph of Emily, holding a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. The back was marked in faded pencil, Lily Walker. July 12th. His hands began to shake. The math unraveled in his mind like a thread snapping under pressure. The timeline, the age, the name Lily. He couldn't deny it anymore. She was his daughter, and she was out there selling flowers at a traffic light while he lived in glass towers and signed checks without meaning. He didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table, with the photo in his hands, watching the sunrise through the windows. For the first time in years, he didn't check his phone, didn't open his email. The light outside was soft, gold, like the petals of the daisy Lily had given him. And for the first time in years, he felt like a man who had been asleep. Now he was waking up. There was a room in Ethan's apartment he hadn't opened in nearly 12 years. It sat at the end of a narrow hallway, behind a white door that had once been painted sky blue. A long time ago, when he still dreamed of a future filled with laughter, wooden toys, and the soft patter of small feet across the floor, this room was meant to be something else. A nursery, a promise, a beginning. But life, in its cold efficiency, had quietly locked it away. That morning, after the attic, after the letter, after the name he couldn't stop whispering, Ethan stood in front of that door. The sunlight spilled from the hallway window, catching the dust in the air like golden ash. His hand hovered over the knob. He wasn't sure why he was trembling. The door creaked as it opened. Inside, the room was frozen in time. Soft green walls, a faded mobile with little fabric stars hanging still over an untouched crib. A stuffed elephant leaned against the corner, one ear half folded. The mattress was still wrapped in its original plastic, slightly yellowed at the edges. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't. He stood at the threshold, like a man staring into a life he was supposed to have lived. On the dresser sat a picture frame, empty. The silence in the room was different from the rest of the apartment. It was thicker, intimate, not hollow, but grieving. His fingers traced the crib's edge. He remembered how Emily had picked the wall color. Not pink, not blue, something soft, like leaves in spring, she'd said, smiling at him with paint. On her nose. Back then, they believed they were building something unbreakable, but they were young, and Emily had been hiding things. Pain he hadn't understood then. Fears she never voiced, and when she left, she took the sound of that room with her. Now, standing there again, Ethan felt like a trespasser in his own past. He closed the door gently, but this time he didn't lock it. Lily hadn't seen the man. In the black car for 2 days. She didn't think much of it. People came and went. Some asked for directions. Some gave her coins. Some looked away like she didn't exist, but he had looked at her differently. Not with pity, not with guilt. Just like he was listening. She liked that. Margaret's cough had worsened overnight. The medicine was gone. The food was low again. And the landlord had slipped another paper under the door. Lily folded it without reading. She had already memorized the red ink. She tucked the basket under her arm and kissed her grandmother's forehead before heading out. The sky was pale and tired-looking. A thin veil of clouds stretched like worn-out cotton across the horizon. The air smelled of rain and iron. At the corner, her usual spot was taken by a man playing guitar. Badly. He nodded at her, but she didn't smile back. Not today. She crossed the avenue and tried the other side. Her feet were sore, her hands already cold. She tightened the frayed scarf around her neck, the one her grandmother had sewn from an old sweater. It still smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. She sold 2 flowers by noon. By 4, her basket was nearly full and her stomach nearly empty. Ethan walked into the shelter without an appointment. His driver tried to follow, but he waved him off. The building was old, brick walls and peeling paint, tucked between a warehouse and a tire shop. A woman at the desk looked up, startled by his presence. He didn't look like he belonged there, too clean, too pressed, too silent. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "Her name is Lily. She's maybe 10 or 11. She sells flowers near North Lexington." The woman frowned. "We don't give out information about children. I'm not here to harm her." He hesitated. "I think she might be my daughter." The air in the room changed. The woman blinked. "Wait here." 10 long minutes passed before she returned with a social worker, a man in his 40s with warm eyes and a clipboard. "Come with me," the man said. They sat in a small office, with mismatched chairs and a buzzing fluorescent light overhead. Ethan explained everything, carefully in halting phrases. Emily, the photo, the name on the back, the birth date, the years he'd spent not knowing. The social worker listened in silence, then asked gently, "Why now?" Ethan's voice cracked, just slightly. "Because I think I saw her, and she looked at me like she'd been waiting." The man nodded slowly. "We can't confirm anything today, but if you're serious, you'll need to start the process. Legally, emotionally. It's not simple. I don't care how complicated it is." The social worker studied him for a moment. "Then we start by finding her, properly." That night, Lily sat by the window, staring at the lights outside. Her grandmother was asleep on the couch, wrapped in blankets that smelled like the past. She held a flower in her hand, a daisy, small and soft, and twirled the stem between her fingers. "Some people just need something beautiful," she whispered. She didn't know why that sentence kept coming back. Maybe because it had made the man in the car stop. Maybe because, deep down, she wanted it to be true. She looked at the empty teacup on the windowsill, the one she used to pretend was for customers in a flower shop she didn't have. She picked it up and held it close. "Tomorrow," she whispered to it like it could hear. "Tomorrow will be better." Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood in the kitchen, the photo of Emily and Lily still in his hand, lit only by the glow of the fridge. He hadn't eaten all day. He didn't feel hungry, just hollow. He walked back to the hallway and opened the door to the nursery again. This time, he stepped inside. He sat in the old rocking chair and let it creak beneath his weight. The room smelled like dust and the past, but it also held something else now, a pulse, a reason. He looked at the empty crib, then at the picture in his hand, and for the first time in years, Ethan cried, not because of guilt or regret, but because there was still time. It started with a storm, not thunder, not lightning, just a slow, soaking rain that made everything quieter. The kind of rain that slips into your clothes and your bones. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay somewhere warm and safe, if you had somewhere warm and safe to stay. Lily didn't. She stood beneath the awning of a bakery, her basket held close to her chest, covered with a plastic bag. Her coat was damp, her shoes had soaked through hours ago, and her hands were red from cold. Still, she stayed. Because that's what she did. Wait. Hope. Sell. A woman passed by and offered her a coin without looking. Lily took it and said thank you anyway. Across the street, a man sat in a car with the engine off. The windows fogged lightly, but Lily noticed him. She always noticed him. Same black coat, same distant eyes. He hadn't spoken to her since that day by the sidewalk, but he kept coming back, and now he was watching again. Ethan watched her through. The misted glass, hands wrapped tight around a coffee cup that had long gone cold. He didn't know how to approach her. Not yet. Not like this. Every instinct in him said just talk to her, but the rest of him knew. Some truths need time. Some doors open from the inside. He'd spent hours at the shelter that week, filling forms, answering questions, letting people with gentler hands and clearer eyes guide him through a world he should have stepped into a decade ago. And now he waited. He kept coming back to the nursery. Not to mourn, but to imagine. Not who Lily might have been, but who she could still become, if she would let him in. By noon, Lily's scarf was soaked. She could barely feel her fingers. Still, she didn't go home. There wasn't anything waiting. there except the smell of wet blankets and medicine that no longer worked. Then she saw her, a girl, no more than 7, bare feet, torn dress. She stood in the rain like she didn't know she was wet. Clutching a soggy sandwich in one hand, shaking, Lily crossed the street without thinking. "Hey," she said gently, "where's your mom?" The girl didn't answer, just looked at her with big, scared eyes. Lily looked around. No one was watching, no one cared. She knelt down and took off her scarf. "Here," she said, wrapping it around the girl's shoulders. "It's not much, but it's warm." The girl didn't speak, just nodded. Lily looked at her basket. 20 flowers. If she sold them all, maybe she could buy the cough syrup and the bread. But the girl was shaking so hard now, her teeth were chattering. Without fully deciding, Lily took out 3 daisies, her best ones, and placed them in the girl's hands. "Go to that cafe," she said, pointing. "Give these to the lady at the counter. Tell her Lily sent you. She'll give you tea." She had no idea if it was true, but she had to try. The girl looked at her, still silent, then turned and walked slowly toward the cafe. Lily watched until she went inside, then she sat on the wet curb and cried quietly where no one would notice. From across the street, Ethan saw everything. He had started the engine, ready to leave, when he noticed the barefoot girl. Watched Lily give away her scarf, watched her kneel in the rain for a child she didn't know, watched her give away the very thing she was supposed to survive on. He didn't need a paternity test to know that was his daughter, not because of blood, but because of who she was, and he had missed too many years of that already. He stepped out of the car. Lily didn't hear him approach. She was wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve when a quiet voice said, "That was kind." She looked up. The man stood there, holding an umbrella above her. He looked out of place again, like someone drawn in charcoal against a world of watercolor. Still, there was something softer about him today. She nodded. "She was freezing. You could have sold those flowers." "I know." He crouched beside her, just enough to see her eyes clearly. "Do you do that often?" "What?" "Give away what little you have." Lily hesitated. "Only when someone needs it more." Ethan felt something shift inside him, like a key turning. "I'm Ethan," he said simply. She didn't offer her name, not yet, but she didn't look away. He reached into his coat and pulled something out, a folded piece of paper, damp at the edges. It was a sketch, a simple one. A little girl with wild hair holding a daisy, drawn in pencil, delicate and imperfect. "I made this after I saw you last time," he said. "I hope that's okay." She took it, slowly, studied it. "It's nice," she said quietly, then added, "You forgot." "The basket," he smiled. "I'll add it next time." That evening, Lily arrived home with only 6 flowers sold, but she had 2 sandwiches wrapped in napkins and the sketch in her pocket. Margaret was asleep, her breathing shallow but steady. Lily covered her gently, then sat by the window, unwrapping. The sandwiches. She placed one beside her grandmother, the other she stared at for a long time before eating. Then she unfolded the drawing. It wasn't just a sketch, it was something else. Proof, maybe, that someone had seen her, really seen her. In his apartment, Ethan returned to the nursery. This time, he brought in the folded drawing. He pinned it above the empty crib. Then, for the first time in 12 years, he turned on the little lamp in the corner. Its glow was soft and golden, almost like morning light. The days grew colder, the kind of cold that crept in even when the windows were shut, the kind of cold that made the air inside the apartment smell like old metal and forgotten winters. Lily did her best. She brought blankets from a neighbor who owed her nothing but kindness. She kept the stove on low, even when the gas bill sat unopened by the door. She warmed soup with her breath when there was nothing else. And Margaret slept more, spoke less, Her hands trembled when she lifted the cup, so Lily held it for her. They didn't talk about what was coming, but both of them knew. Ethan came every day now. He never said much. Sometimes he brought a sketch, sometimes just silence. He would stand at the corner, coat zipped, hands in his pockets, and watch from across the street until Lily looked up. That was enough, then he'd leave. She never asked why he came, and he never offered a reason, but his presence began to feel like something solid in her otherwise drifting days. She still didn't know who he really was, but part of her had stopped, needing to. It happened on a Thursday morning. There was no storm, no lightning, no dramatic gesture from the sky, just quiet. Lily woke to the sound of nothing. She turned toward the bed where Margaret usually stirred, and what she saw was stillness. Too still, the kind that fills the lungs with stones. She didn't scream. She walked over slowly, touched her grandmother's hand, still warm. Then she sat down and stayed there for a long time, not crying, not moving, just holding the hand of the only person who had ever stayed, and now wouldn't again. The funeral was small, just Lily, a neighbor, and a woman from the church who remembered Margaret from when her legs still worked and her voice still told stories. The priest said the usual things, about rest, about peace, about how the body returns to dust. Lily didn't hear most of it. She was staring at the daisy in her hand, one she had saved from her basket, white petals, a soft yellow center, slightly bruised. She placed it on the closed coffin before they lowered it. Then she whispered something no one else could hear. "Thank you for waiting until I woke up." Afterward, she didn't go home. She walked without knowing where. Her feet took her somewhere her heart hadn't dared to go alone. The bench, the one by the nursery window. She sat there, soaked from drizzle, Daisy's stem still in her hand, coat open, and Ethan found her like that. She didn't look up, he didn't speak. He sat down beside her, close but not touching, and placed an old handkerchief on her lap. It smelled like cologne and memories. "I don't have words," he said, voice quiet. "I'm not sure I need any," she replied, staring straight ahead. The silence between them stretched, not heavy, just honest. She spoke first. She raised me. After my mum died, she taught me how to boil potatoes and sing with my throat closed when I was cold. She never bought flowers, but she always said daisies reminded her of strength. Ethan nodded, barely. My mother's name was Emily. She added suddenly. He flinched, barely perceptible, but she saw it. "I know who you are," she said. "Not your name, but I've known, since you gave me the drawing." He turned his head, slowly. "I never meant to disappear," he said. "But I didn't know how to come back. And then I saw you, and—" She shook her head. "I'm not angry. I'm just tired." The rain picked up again, soft and steady. He opened his umbrella and held it over both of them. This time she didn't move away. That night Lily went home and lit the stove for warmth. She made tea from old mint leaves and sat by the window, looking at the street. The daisy from the funeral was in a cup, petals falling one by one. She didn't stop them. When she finished her tea, she reached into her coat and pulled out the handkerchief he had given her. Folded inside, it was a drawing. Not of her, not of him, but of an old woman sitting in a rocking chair, with a little girl asleep at her feet. It was charcoal and soft shading. The signature at the bottom read simply, E. Carter. She stared at it for a long time. Then she taped it to the wall above her bed, right beside the first drawing he had given her. 2 stories, one ending, one beginning, side by side. The next morning, Ethan stood by the bakery, waiting. Not in the car, not. Across the street, he stood where she could see him. He held 2 paper cups of tea, steam curling into the early light. Lily walked toward him, hair pulled back, eyes tired but clear. She took the tea without a word. Then she said, I need a job. He nodded. Okay. I'm not asking for help. I just want to earn enough to stay, to live. Then we'll find a way. She looked at him for a moment, searching his face. Then she reached into her coat and handed him something. Her basket of flowers, empty now, worn, frayed at the handles. Keep this for me, she said, just until I need it again. He took it with both hands, held it like something sacred. I will, he said. I promise. The days after Margaret's death passed like faded pages in a forgotten book. Lily rose early, walked with purpose, but something in her had gone silent. She sold a few flowers again, mostly out of habit, not hope. The basket was lighter. Her steps heavier. Ethan didn't ask questions, but he came every day. He stood nearby, not watching her work, but being close enough to feel like a shadow she had chosen to keep. Sometimes he brought tea. Sometimes he brought nothing at all. Once he brought a coat, old but warm. He didn't say it was his, but she recognized the smell, like rain on leather and paper. She wore it without a word. One evening, just before dusk, he asked her something different. Come with me, he said. She looked up from arranging daisies on the wooden crate she used as a stand. Where? Someplace I haven't been in years. She hesitated, not because she didn't trust him, but because she did. She nodded. They walked without speaking much, past the bakery, the old bookstore, the cafe that used to have music on Fridays, past places that held the sounds of other people's laughter. He led her to the edge of the city, where buildings grew taller, colder. Then he stopped in front of a gate. Iron, black, stillness behind it. Lily looked through the bars. It wasn't a house. It was something older, a manor, with ivy curling like veins over the stone, windows wide but dark. This was mine, he said. She blinked. Yours? He nodded, eyes on the house. I grew up here, then inherited it when I was 29. She stared. The gates, the stone, the silence. I've walked past this place for years, she whispered. I never knew. I left it locked, empty. I couldn't live here. Not after. He stopped himself. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then he opened the gate and let her in. Inside, the air smelled like forgotten dreams. Dust clung to every surface. Light filtered through the windows like memory, furniture covered with sheets. A piano sat closed in the corner, the kind that had once held lullabies in its belly. Lily stepped in slowly, her fingers brushing the wall. Why show me this? Because I'm tired of hiding. He lit a single lamp. The soft yellow glow felt like the past exhaling. I used to paint in that room, he said, pointing down a hallway. And in this one, I remember her laugh. Lily turned toward him. Her. He looked at her, eyes darker now. Your mother. A tremor ran through her. She came here once, he said. Just once. She was 19, angry, brave. She stood in that doorway and told me I wasn't a father just because I sent money. He paused, and she was right. Lily's heart beat louder in her chest. I didn't know how to love someone I hadn't earned, he said. She gave me a chance. One. I ruined it. Lily's breath caught. She never told me. She wouldn't. She wanted you to have one memory of your father, his absence, not his failure. The truth settled like snow, heavy, cold, silent. And yet, Lily didn't feel the anger she expected, only the ache, and something else, the soft outline of a puzzle piece falling into place. He led her into a small room near the back of the house. The door creaked open. Inside were canvases, dozens, some covered, some bare. Ethan pulled the sheet from one of them. It was a painting of a girl, maybe 10 or 11. Her eyes soft, her hands clasped around a small bear. The background was just light, no place, no setting, just warmth. Lily stepped closer. That's me, she said, voice a whisper. He nodded. I never stopped drawing you. From the memory your mother gave me, from sketches, from dreams. I painted who I thought you were. Tears welled in her eyes. You painted what I was becoming. They stood in silence, surrounded by unfinished portraits, symbols of years missed. Regret poured in color, and suddenly she understood. This man, this stranger who wasn't quite a stranger, had been searching for her long before she knew to be found. She walked to a shelf and picked up a small wooden box. It was dusty, the latch rusted, but something about it called to her. "Open it," he said softly. Inside were things no one else would have kept. A photo of her mother as a teenager, laughing on a swing, a hospital bracelet, Lily Carter, born 7:42 a.m., a crumpled note. "She looks just like you," signed Emily. Lily's throat closed. "She sent it," Ethan said, "and I kept it. Every year I thought I'd send something back, but the longer I waited, the harder it became." Lily reached into the box and took out the bracelet. The plastic was yellowed, the print faded, but her name was still there. "I never knew you had this," she whispered. "I didn't know how to give it to you." They returned to the main hall. Ethan lit another lamp. The whole place felt less abandoned now, like the past was exhaling, finally making room for the present. Lily turned to him, her voice steady. "I don't need you to fix anything," he nodded. "I wouldn't know how, but I need to know something. Anything. If you could go back, would you choose differently?" He looked at her for a long time, and then said, "Yes, every single day." It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was the most honest thing he had ever said. She believed him, and that changed everything. Later that night, before leaving the house, Lily stopped at the base of the stairs. On the wall was an old mirror, cracked, tarnished at the edges. She looked at herself, not the way strangers did on sidewalks, but the way you look at something you're finally beginning to understand. Behind her, Ethan stood, reflected too. Two figures, not father and daughter by design, but perhaps now by choice. She raised a hand and touched the crack in the glass. Then she turned to him. "Let's not hide any more." He smiled, tired, grateful. "No more hiding," he agreed. As they stepped outside, the wind picked up, not harsh, but cleansing. Lily reached for the coat he had given her, wrapping it tighter, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't cold. The next morning, Lily woke up before the sun. The apartment was silent. The corner where her grandmother's rocking chair had been was now just a corner. But there was no emptiness, only memory, soft, warm, present. She sat by the window, holding the bracelet in her hands. The name faded, the plastic worn, but it felt alive. It didn't ache anymore. It pulsed. Downstairs, a horn sounded, short, careful. She looked out and saw the black car waiting. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat, Ethan's coat, and slipped the bracelet into the pocket. She didn't need to carry flowers that day, just herself. The car ride was quiet at first. Ethan didn't speak much, but there was a different kind of silence now, comfortable, like a pause, between two people who didn't need to fill the space with noise. Then he said, almost apologetically, "I don't know what comes next." Lily looked out the window. The city was still waking up, lights flickering on, shopkeepers pulling up shutters, the world beginning again. "That's okay," she said. "I think we can figure it out." He nodded. It wasn't a plan, but it was a start. He took her to a place she didn't expect, a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't rich, not grand, but there were flowers growing wild in the front yard, daisies, lilies, even violets. A wind chime hung by the porch, swaying with a silver whisper. "This was my mother's house," Ethan said quietly. "She left it to me. I haven't stepped inside in over a decade." Lily turned to him. "Why now?" "Because maybe it's time to plant something, instead of bury it." They stepped inside together. The air smelled of wood and lavender and thyme. She could feel it, the bones of a life waiting to be lived again. Over the next weeks, they worked on the house. She painted the walls with wide, unsure strokes. He fixed things that creaked or leaked. They found her grandmother's rocking chair a new home in the corner of the living room. He bought a kettle. She found old cups in the cabinets. The house began to fill, not with furniture but with warmth. He never asked her to stay. She never asked if she could. One morning, she came down the stairs and made tea in her socks. He didn't say a word, just smiled. That was how she knew. She was home. They still went into town sometimes. Lily still brought flowers, but now just for a few people. The baker's wife who had lost her husband, the librarian who loved forget-me-nots. Not for money, for connection. And always, she carried hope, the little bear now stitched at the shoulder. Ethan had helped her sew it, his fingers clumsy but careful. "You're not bad at this," she had teased. He had smiled, brushing dust from the thread. "I'm learning." She kept the bear close now, not because she needed it to hold her together, but because it reminded her of who had helped her stay whole. One afternoon, they visited Margaret's grave. Lily brought a single lily. Ethan stood beside her, quiet, hands in his coat. "She believed in people before they believed in themselves," Lily said. Ethan nodded. "You have that same light." Lily looked down at the stone. She touched the name gently, then placed the flower. "I'm not angry anymore," she whispered. "I think that's what she would have wanted." As they turned to go, Ethan reached for her hand. It was the first time he had done that, and she let him, not as a father, not yet, but as someone learning to be one. Later that week, they sat on the porch, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. Lily held a mug of tea, her knees drawn to her chest. "I used to dream of being anywhere but where I was," she said. "Now I don't want to leave." Ethan glanced at her. "Then don't." She looked at him. "It's not just the place. It's the way I feel in it." He nodded, understanding. "I don't think you ever stopped being part of my story," she continued, "even when I didn't know your name. I don't think I ever stopped hoping you'd find your way back into mine," he said. And just like that, something settled between them, not fixed, not finished, but real. That night, she found an old drawer in the hallway closet. Inside were scattered papers, letters, sketches, postcards unsent. Among them, a folded page, a letter her mother had written but never mailed. It was addressed to Ethan. "Lily asked about you today. She thinks her father lives in the clouds." I didn't correct her. "Maybe it's better she sees you there, above her, distant, shining. It's easier to miss a star than to miss someone standing still." Lily folded the letter back, slowly. She didn't cry, but her hands trembled. She walked to Ethan, who was reading by the fire. "I found this," she said. He read it in silence, then looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I never deserved either of you," he said softly. She sat beside him. "It's not about deserving," she said. "It's about choosing." He reached for her hand again, and this time she held his tighter. One morning, weeks later, Ethan asked her if she wanted to go for a drive. "Where to?" "You'll see." They drove for hours, past hills and fading highways. Eventually, they reached a wide meadow, nothing but grass, wind and sky. In the center, a small wooden structure, half-built. Ethan parked, got out, and opened the trunk. Inside were tools, nails, wood, blueprints. "What is this?" she asked. "I want to build something new," he said. "Not alone, with you." She laughed. "I don't know how to build." "Neither do I." They stood in the sunlight, the wind tossing her hair. "You sure about this?" she asked. "I've never been more sure." She looked at the blueprint. It wasn't a house. It was a greenhouse. Warm, fragile, meant for growing things. Lily blinked. "Why a greenhouse?" He looked at her and smiled. "Because you taught me to take care of something small and watch it bloom." She didn't answer. She just took a hammer and began to work, side by side, nail by nail, hope by hope. That night, as they sat in the grass looking at the stars, Ethan spoke again. "You once said your mother told you your father was a ghost." Lily nodded. "She was wrong," he said. "She wasn't," Lily replied, "but ghosts can become real if you let them." They both smiled. Above them, the stars shimmered, not as unreachable things, but as lights they now understood, each one a part of a story, each one a memory they were finally ready to hold. It was a storm that woke her. Thunder rolled through the walls like a memory coming back too loud. Rain pounded the roof in a rhythm that reminded Lily of footsteps, fast, urgent, leaving. She sat up in bed. The room smelled of earth and pine. The wind pressed against the windows, like someone asking to be let in. Ethan wasn't there. She pulled on a sweater and padded barefoot down the stairs. The house creaked beneath her weight. Not broken, just old, honest. The front door was ajar. She stepped outside and saw him standing in the rain, his shoulders slumped, his hair soaked, unmoving. He didn't turn when she called his name. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, stepping into the rain beside him. He didn't look at her. His voice was low, cracked. "I thought I heard her." Lily followed his gaze. There was nothing but trees and night. "My mother," he added. "I used to hear her in storms." Lily swallowed hard. "Do you still?" He nodded slowly. "She'd sing when it rained. I forgot the song, but the sound stayed." Lily placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to be alone in it anymore," she said. But he didn't move, and that was when she understood. He still didn't believe he deserved to be forgiven. Not by his mother, not by her, not even by himself. In the morning he was gone. No note, no message, just a quiet unfinished breakfast, and his coat hanging on the back of the chair. Lily didn't cry. She made tea. She sat in the rocking chair. She waited. For an hour, then a day, then 3. On the 4th morning, she put on his coat. She walked into town. She didn't look for him. She looked for herself. At the flower shop she asked to work. The owner, a kind woman with streaks of silver in her hair, gave her an apron and a nod. Lily spent the day with soil. Under her nails, petals on her skin. She arranged roses in silence. She remembered how to be still without being hollow. She still carried hope in her bag, still wore the bracelet on her wrist, still walked home past the bakery, where the old man waved even though she didn't stop. Still waited, but not like before. Now, she waited while growing. One evening, the sky turned gold at the edges. Lily sat by the window and whispered to the empty room. "You left again," she said, "but this time I stayed." The silence answered her. She wasn't angry, just tired. She walked outside and sat on the porch step. A breeze carried the scent of jasmine and something else, something sharp like memory. She remembered her mother's voice, her grandmother's hands, Ethan's silence. Then, without warning, headlights, the black car, slow, hesitant. She didn't move, not until he stepped out. He looked thinner, not in body, but in presence, as if something had unraveled inside him. He walked to the porch and stopped a few steps away. "I thought I had to disappear," he said. "I know," she answered. "I thought I'd ruin it if I stayed." "You didn't," his voice broke. "But I did leave." Lily stood. She didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, the letter her mother had written. She handed it to him. He unfolded it, read it again slowly. When he looked up, tears lined his eyes. "But I don't know how to be a father," he whispered. She met his gaze. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here." That night, he stayed. They didn't talk much. They sat on the floor of the old living room, a single lamp casting a circle of light. He told her about the years he had spent running, from his grief, from the guilt, from himself. She listened, not to fix him, just to witness him. When he faltered, she didn't fill the silence. She let it breathe, and in that space something unspoken began to grow. Trust, perhaps, or something softer. Love, still unnamed, but no longer impossible. In the morning, Lily left a flower on his bedside table, a daisy, small, ordinary, brave. She found him in the garden later, mending a section of the fence. "You don't have to fix everything," she said gently. He looked up at her. "I know," he said, "but I want to protect what's growing." She smiled. For the first time she believed him, not because he promised, but because he stayed, and that in the end was everything. The land behind the house had always been quiet, untouched, wild. But now it was waking up. Ethan stood beside Lily, his hands in his pockets, surveying the patch of soil they'd cleared that morning. It wasn't much, just a rectangle of earth, bordered by old bricks they'd found in the shed. But to her, it looked like possibility. "I was thinking," she said, brushing her hands on her jeans. "We could build something here." He raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "A greenhouse." He looked at her. She didn't flinch. He smiled, just barely. "You know how to build one?" "Nope," she said, "but I know how to try." The next few days were slow and full. They gathered wood from the barn, salvaged glass from old windows. They argued over measurements, laughed when things fell apart, learned how to hold a hammer and how to hold space for each other. Every morning began with black coffee and silence. Every evening ended with dirt under their fingernails and new. Sentences formed between long pauses. Sometimes he'd look at her and forget the years he'd lost. Sometimes she'd catch herself hoping he wouldn't disappear again. But neither said it. They just kept building. Inside the house, the air felt different now. Hope, the bear, still sat on Lily's bed, now with a small patch sewn on one ear. Ethan had done it one night, when he thought she wouldn't notice. He didn't mention it, she didn't either, but the next day she placed Hope on the windowsill, facing the garden, facing the future. On the fourth day, it rained. Hard. They sat inside, watching water streak down the glass. Lily spoke first. "Do you think she would have liked you?" He didn't ask who. He knew. "I don't know," he said, "but I think I would have liked to try." Lily nodded. She liked people who didn't pretend. He looked at her. "I'm not pretending anymore." She looked back. "I know." That night she dreamt of her mother's voice. Not the words, just the tone. Warm and amused, like sunlight through a jar of honey. She woke up smiling. The rain stopped by morning. The greenhouse was half finished. They worked all day. In the afternoon, Ethan cut his hand on a shard of glass. Lily rushed to him, took his hand gently, wrapped it in a clean cloth. He winced. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, but then he looked at her, really looked. "I'm scared," he whispered. She held his hand tighter. "Me too," she said. He nodded. Then he let her see it. The grief he still carried, the shame, the hope, and she didn't look away. They finished the greenhouse 2 days later. It wasn't perfect. Some of the glass was crooked. The door creaked. One of the panels fogged up too easily, but it stood, solid, real. They planted lavender first, then wildflowers, then tomatoes, because Ethan said they reminded him of summers he barely remembered. They worked in silence, their hands side by side in the soil. "Do you think things can really grow here?" he asked. Lily looked around. "The trees, the house, the sky opening just a little, they already are," she said. That evening they sat inside the greenhouse. The sun dipped low, lighting the glass with gold. "I used to think love was a story. Someone else got to have," Lily said. He didn't answer, but he reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. She let him hold it. Not out of need, but out of choice. A bird sang somewhere in the trees. Hope sat on the windowsill of the house, watching. Inside the greenhouse, surrounded by new life, they sat in silence. not because they didn't have words, but because they didn't need them. Later, Ethan stood by the old shed, watching Lily place a tiny sign into the soil. Planted by Lily and Ethan. He walked toward her, paused, then reached into his jacket. He pulled out a photo. It was old, worn, a woman smiling beside a car, hair messy, eyes laughing. "My mother," he said. "The only picture I kept." Lily took it carefully. "She looks like someone who'd love sunflowers." "She did," he whispered. Then he pulled something else out, a seed packet, sunflowers. Lily smiled. They planted them together. When the stars came out, they stayed in the greenhouse, curled up on the floor, the smell of earth around them. "I never thought I'd get this," Ethan said quietly. "What?" Lily asked. "A second chance." She rested her head on his shoulder. "It's not second," she said. "It's the one that matters." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years he believed her. The morning was slow and golden. Lily stood barefoot on the porch, a cup of tea warming her hands. The greenhouse shimmered in the distance, dewdrops catching the first light like tiny constellations. Birds were already awake, their songs weaving between the leaves. Inside the house, Ethan was still sleeping, the kind of sleep that comes after peace. Lily closed her eyes. There was a new stillness inside her now, not the silence of emptiness, but the quiet that follows healing. Margaret arrived that afternoon. Her taxi rolled up the gravel path, sending up dust that glowed in the light. Lily ran to meet her, barefoot again, hair braided back. She looked older, Margaret thought, not in years, but in presence. "Grandma," Lily whispered, arms around her. Margaret held her tightly. "Look at you." They stood there for a long time before entering the house. Ethan had prepared lunch, nothing fancy, just grilled cheese, fresh tomatoes from the greenhouse, and lemonade. But it felt like a feast. Margaret watched him as he served the food. Quiet and composed, but different, lighter, present. "You look like your mother," she said suddenly. Ethan paused. He glanced at Lily, then back to Margaret. "I wish I'd known her longer." Margaret nodded. "You still can." He didn't ask what she meant. He just took the seat beside Lily and stayed. Later they walked through the garden together. Lily showed her grandmother the greenhouse, the rows of wildflowers, the crooked tomato. "Vines," she pointed to the sunflower bed. "Nothing yet," she said, "but they're coming." Margaret crouched, brushing her fingers over the soil. "They always take longer than we expect," she said, "but they bloom when they're ready." Lily smiled. Something inside her loosened. That evening they sat outside as the sky turned. Orange, Ethan lit a fire in the old pit. Margaret hummed a tune Lily hadn't heard in years. Hope sat nestled in Lily's lap, now a little threadbare, a little wiser. "Tell me about her," Ethan said softly. Margaret looked into the flames. She was fire and rain, quiet and wild. She used to sing while washing dishes, and she cried during commercials. Lily laughed. "She once baked a cake that collapsed in the middle," Margaret added, smiling. "She filled it with strawberries and told everyone it was a surprise dessert." Ethan's eyes shimmered. He didn't speak, but he listened with his whole being. The next morning, Lily woke before the sun. She tiptoed outside, Hope tucked under one arm. She walked to the greenhouse, past the tomatoes and lavender, until she reached the sunflower bed and froze. Tiny green shoots had broken through the soil. She dropped to her knees, heart fluttering. They were growing. She looked up at the sky, pale and waking. Then at the house, where two people were still, asleep, and she felt it, that quiet, glowing thing. Home. A few days later, a letter arrived. It came from the children's shelter where she used to visit with Margaret. They'd heard about her garden, about her story. They asked if she'd come speak to the younger kids, maybe teach them to plant something, maybe just be there. She showed the letter to Ethan. "I'm scared," she said. "Me too," he answered. Then he added, "But I'll come with you." They went together. The children ran to them with muddy hands and wide eyes. Lily taught them how to dig small holes, how to water gently, how to whisper wishes to the seeds. Ethan helped a boy build a birdhouse. Later, Lily gave the boy her old, stuffed bear, Hope. He held it to his chest and didn't let go. When they left, the garden was a mess of laughter and growing things, and Lily knew her mother would have loved this. Weeks passed. The house breathed with new life. Margaret visited often. Ethan started painting again. Quiet landscapes, mostly of hands holding soil, or windows full of flowers. Lily spent mornings in the greenhouse and afternoons writing letters she didn't always send. One night, after a long day, they sat on the porch again. Ethan turned to her. "Do you ever think about the past?" he asked. "Only when it helps me love the present more," she said. He looked at her for a long time. Then, carefully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring. Simple, silver, etched with a sunflower. "I don't know how to ask this," he said. "You already did," Lily whispered, and she said yes. The sunflowers bloomed in late summer, tall, bright, defiant. They turned their golden heads toward the sun, unapologetic in their joy. Lily stood among them, fingers brushing each petal, heart full. She thought of her mother, of cold nights and quiet mornings, of hands that healed and eyes that saw. She thought of loss and love and all the things in between. Ethan came up behind her, placed his arms around her, and for the first time in her life, Lily didn't feel like she had to become someone else to be loved. She just was, whole, home, alive.